Nefeli Papadakis is a highly decorated American judoka who competed in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics in judo, of course. And in this episode, we get into what it was like to compete during the pandemic, the mental side of sports, amongst other things. And I'm sorry if the audio is a little glitchy at times, but what are you going to do? Enjoy.
Is that good?
Hey, Nefeli.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. I saw you just did a jiu-jitsu tournament last week and took gold. How was that?
Yeah, it was great. I'm starting to get my feet wet again on the competition scene. So definitely more jiu-jitsu focused than judo nowadays. But it was, exciting. I'm doing Jiu-Jitsu Con at the end of the month in Vegas too. So excited to get out there. So this one was a little more the pre big competition.
Right.
But so I'm excited for the next one in a couple weeks.
Is that the plan to kind of go full steam into the jiu-jitsu scene and start competing?
Yeah, it is. I wasn't able to compete in jiu-jitsu while I was really focused on my judo career because of rules and time and a bunch of different stuff. So I'm really excited to just get to really get the full jiu-jitsu experience. I want to do the worlds next year. Have a lot of goals for jiu-jitsu, so I want to get those in.
Absolutely. And how do you find those tournaments, like the one, what was it, the Chicago Open?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you find when you do those sorts of tournaments and the competition, was that one sort of easy, or were you finding it to be a little bit challenging?
Challenges in their own way. I think my preparation was really good for this one. I have a great team at home that I work with that's, great at pushing the pace, making sure I'm sharp on stuff I'm doing. It wasn't too challenging, but definitely something I had to take into consideration was the weight cut for this one. Judo, I was fighting 78 kilos, which was like 171.5 pounds.
Right.
And we do 4 weigh-in, so cutting weight I wasn't really cutting weight.
Right.
In my judo towards the end.
Never.
Not really. I walked at 168, 169, so I was always under a little. I didn't have any problems with that. But for this tournament, I was doing middle heavyweight. So it was 163.5 in the gi. So I had to be closer to 159. So I did have to, diet down a bit more, be more careful about what I'm eating, how I'm eating, when I'm eating, and all that good stuff. That was probably the more challenging part, to get my mind in the right place, my body obviously in the right place and right weight. But it was good. I'm glad I did it right before another big tournament, so that I, have that confidence that I can definitely make it. It's,
You're Greek, so food must always be a challenge, right? I mean, Greek food is so good.
I'm Greek and Filipino, man. My chances were... Yeah.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
It's so good. But what are some of the things that translate well from what you already did into, sort of stepping into the jiu-jitsu? And what are some of the things that you might have to rewire your brain at in order to sort of overcome and work into this new game?
Judo and jiu-jitsu are just perfect complements to each other. Judo is probably 90% stand-up and 10% ground, and jiu-jitsu is the complete opposite. So definitely just tailoring my game to doing a takedown and then being on top passing, or being comfortable having a decent guard game, stuff like that. More little details, especially now that at brown belts, there are leg locks to consider and worry about for offense, defensive purposes, mostly stuff like that. I think the thing that translates the best is obviously my stand-up game, but also my competition experience. I don't really get super nervous anymore. I think I have gotten so used to, over the years, being able to flip that switch and kind of be on when I need to be on, and know how to shift my focus from just regular training mindset or just everyday going through the motions mindset to, okay, it's competition day. I do A, B, C, D, and I kind of have my steps to get in my rhythm and in my zone.
That's really interesting when it comes to competition, because I've known, maybe you can speak to this when it comes to high level athletes, but I've known some really, really talented people who are just absolute savages and killers in the gym. But something about when those lights go on,
those Dojo Warriors, yep.
Yeah, what's that all about?
I've seen, oh my God, so many times, people older than me, of course, and kids I've trained who I'm like, oh my God, what is this? What's happening? I think it's such a big mental game. And I think that's probably one of the things that really separates, top high level elite athletes from just the Dojo Warriors. That's what I like to call them.
Yeah.
they'll like mess up literally anyone at the gym, but then they go to a competition and will fight like someone's dad, some guy, I don't know, and they'll lose to someone they're way better than, and they've shown, you know, in practice every day they're way better than. But I think a big part of that is being able to focus on mental training too. Some people, like with music, I'm a music person when I warm up and kind of get into the right state of mind. And some people listen to like heavy metal or like loud music or whatever to get them hyped up. And some people need the opposite, where they'll listen to like love songs or classical music or something to just like calm down. So it's being able to know yourself and how you are on those days when you need to perform.
Were you superstitious when you were competing as well? Was it like you needed to like follow a routine every single time, or else you were kind of off?
No, not as much. Just because when you're like, when I was overseas fighting, I mean, I could try to follow a routine however I wanted to, but I found that ultimately it can be so unpredictable, you know? If everything has to be absolutely perfect for me to do well on that day.
Well, that's it, right? Like maybe that's it. The adaptability factor is not there with some of those people. When something's off, it's just off.
I think so. And some of them are probably like, well, everyone expects me to do so well because I always do so well at the gym. So then they just keep adding pressure. And you kind of have to be able to take yourself out of that mindset and be like, okay, it's just me out there. I'm the one that needs to figure out what's going on, how to win, and how to, you know, pull it out. Because as good of a coach as you may have, you know, at the end of the day, you're the one out there. If you're not listening to them or you see or feel something they can't, you know, feel your opponent doing, or they maybe miss in that split second that it happens, you're the one that has to be able, like you were saying, to be adaptable and really take advantage of those mistakes.
And what kind of coaches do you like? Do you like the ones that are like screaming every single move at you, or do you like the ones that are kind of just silent and let you do your thing?
Definitely the second one. Although I appreciate the presence that I feel sometimes, sometimes it just gets a bit clouded.
Sometimes when I watch the UFC, the coaches are literally screaming every single move like a remote control, right? They're trying to like dictate everything. And I never understood that. Your fighters in there, they're prepared. They have to go with what they know, right?
And one of the things my coaches always say is like, if I have to tell you exactly what to do every single time with every single step, you weren't ready to do this. I should be telling you like reminders or telling you how much time is left, not pull guard with your left foot on their hip and then close it. And like that's too far gone.
Madness. I want to talk a little bit about your Olympic career. Mostly just, again, adaptability. You competed in the Tokyo Olympics, which obviously crazy time, pandemic time. What was that whole situation like? And how did it throw off your training? Did you even know if it was going to happen, or what was the whole deal?
So none of us knew if it was going to happen. You know, everything, I'm sure we were all, I know I was like checking Yahoo News and like every news outlet possible, every article. And they don't know what's happening. You know, they're just writing stuff for the clicks and for the views and whatever. It was easily the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life, just not knowing whether it was happening or not. I remember in the very beginning, I really did wish they just would have decided like, we're doing this or we're not doing this. Because that like couple months of stress really like took a toll, I think, on a lot of us mentally.
Yeah.
You know, it's for judo, at least it's a 4-year cycle. So you're like, you're training for 4 years, or at least, you know, 1 year specifically tailored to peak at this month on this day or whatever, you know? So just hearing that it might not happen at all, I think really freaked me out, because I was like, oh, perfect. It's like, of course, my first Olympics is just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure athletes will understand this, but the ramping up to an event like that is so precise. How did you actually do it? Were you just every day kind of monitoring and like training hard or training soft and just kind of oscillating with what you were seeing? Or
I was training hard because, I mean, for me, I just always be prepared just in case, right? Because if they canceled it, they canceled it. If they didn't cancel it and it happened and I wasn't ready because I decided to like take a break, I would never forgive myself, right? I don't even know how I would deal with that part mentally.
Yeah.
Small camp of like 4 or 5 of us. And we were, you know, God bless those kids. They were all, I was 22. They were all like 18 and 19-year-old, like freshmen in college kids who were like, you know, they wanted to go out and have fun and do all this stuff. And they sacrificed their time for me. And I was asking them like, listen, I don't, I'm not going to tell you guys not to go out and have fun and do whatever your decisions are, just understand that I'm in this part of my life. This is so important. Like, if you guys are getting sick or like you're doing some craziness, just don't show up and let me know. Can't show up to the Olympics and like pop for COVID and then have all this. It was crazy.
So you get there, and then what is it like? What's the atmosphere, and what are the arrangements, and how are they monitoring and kind of enforcing everything?
Well, when we got there, it felt, honestly, relief, because I was like, okay, we're finally here. Now I can just do the thing. I think the lead up of it even happening, qualification and all that type of stuff was the most stressful part. But once I knew I had made the team and okay, the events are happening and the ball's rolling now, I felt a lot of relief.
Yeah.
Protocol wise, we were testing every day, every morning. They had these little the spit tests. I don't know how much you've heard about those ones.
Yeah.
The dailies, and they'd run them through. So every morning we'd have to spit in a little tube and do that. It was a little harder for sports like ours where they're weight cutting sports because
there's nothing to spit.
Yeah, exactly. And not so much for myself, but some of my teammates working a little bit more to make their weight. It was an extra stressor that I'm not gonna say it was unnecessary because there were so many people in there, but it was just an extra layer of something they had to worry about and take into consideration.
Did you feel a little bit robbed of the Olympic experience because it went down like that?
A little bit, but also it could have not happened at all. So I'm glad it happened. I don't regret anything I did. Of course, I wish none of the COVID stuff happened. I wish it was like a normal Olympics, but at the end of the day, I'm thankful it even happened at all and that I got to, live a unique experience throughout it. And I've been to Japan before, so I have a lot of love for Japan. It's one of the most fun places I've ever traveled to.
That's the other thing. You got to compete in Tokyo. I mean, in judo, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. Competing at the Budokan is just such a cool stadium. Is so historical for our sport, and it was an honor.
Wow. And so how did the judo journey begin for you growing up? I know you started young, but what was the genesis of your judo story?
Okay, so basically, my brother better not watch this. He was my older brother.
My brother.
Yeah, he was such a sweet kid growing up, but I guess there was one day at some family event, church event, that he was getting like bullied around by this older kid. My brother's probably 8. This kid's probably like 12, 13. And I ran up to the kid and like punched him. And I was like 4. And my dad was like, oh God. My dad was kind of like, well, let's see what happens here. So I start chasing this kid down to like do something about him bullying my brother as if my little hands were gonna do any work. But after that, my dad threw my brother into judo just to get him to do something for, self-defense, build some skills. After like 2 weeks, I kept asking to go. I was always there anyways, just sitting and watching. So they let me try it out. And that was like, I guess that's my kind of origin story. That's how I first started when I was a little girl. I was 4. I just kept going. One of my coaches there was, his kids were both very high level in judo too. And his daughter went to the Olympic trials.
Oh, wow.
In 2004. She didn't make the team, but she definitely kind of set the stage for me to look up to and be like, oh, she's really good. I want to be like this girl. And kind of just went from there.
And then how did it progress for you through your teenage years? Just tournaments and kept going? Same school, I imagine?
Yeah. My dad actually opened his own school when I was like 13 years old. And he was my coach my whole life.
Nice,
so
Dad.
Yeah, I started just being under him until I was 17 or 18. And then it kind of was like every time I needed to really take a step up, I added like another layer, another coach, a different look on my game and stuff like that. It was a lot of tournaments growing up. Every year, at least 3. There was like 3 national tournaments they had every year. I was going to those. God, probably from age 10 to 20 for like probably 10 years there. I was going a couple times a year. They had the senior nationals. I was doing all of it as much as I could. Then once it got to like real senior level judo, it was a lot more traveling to like Miami to train. I had my teammates in Chicago who were great training partners, but I did need a little bit more outside help. I also went to San Diego to train with my coach, Justin Flores.
Oh, Justin, yeah.
Yeah, I went out there to train with him a couple times.
Who was also training with Ronda for a long time?
Yeah. He was very like big brother for her. But I went out there a couple times. I needed help with like the little details to my game. I had like fighting spirit part. I had a good foundation, but I needed that change from like kind of junior level, 20-year-old level to the senior level for judo, which is a lot different.
And when did you kind of like realize that you were good in next level and kind of you could do this?
Yeah, I had a couple. So the first one was definitely when I was a freshman in high school. So 15, 16, my dad sent me to Japan for 2 weeks to train with high school girls. But you know, when you're 15 and those girls are 18, you're yeah. So I got beat up really bad for 2 weeks. I cried probably every day and complained every day. And then I came home, and that was probably what I'd label my make it or break it moment for myself. I came home and I worked hard for a year. I worked really, really hard for a year. The year after that, in 2015, I took 5th at the Cadet World Championships. And I think I was the first person to place top 5 in like, I want to say 5 or 10 years, but in a while. And that's kind of what gave me the inkling of like, okay, you can do this. Started working harder the next year. 2016, I went back to Japan, and I was the one, you know, kind of giving other people the work on that trip instead of being on the receiving end. So it was really good for my confidence. And that's kind of what spurred me to really believe that I could do this. I can keep going. I can grow.
Amazing. I mean, the path that you took is interesting to me because there's no real money and glory for getting rich. A lot of people, I'm sure a lot of your friends were playing softball and basketball and doing whatever, but the path of going towards something that is just for like the glory of the glory itself. What do most people do after the Olympics?
You know, I think that's a big, I'm going to say problem in the community. I think a lot of people, because it truly takes all your focus and all your time to make an Olympic team and be an Olympian. And I think because of the time frame most people do that within, which I'll argue is like your later teens and your early 20s, when everybody else is like going to college, getting their school done and doing all that stuff, a lot of people lose sight of like a goal. For a lot of people, once the Olympics are over, they're like, okay, what now? And there's not really a set pathway or anything that anyone know. Like there's no, okay, now we do this. It's not like everyone else, like they graduate high school. Okay, now we go to college. Now we go to trade school. It's a lot different in that sense. So I'm really happy. My parents at least were like, okay, you know, go to school, finish school, and then you can figure out from there how to proceed. So I'm actually going to be done with my bachelor's in a couple weeks, thank God. Nice. Finally. I really wish there was a clearer path or more insight on stuff like that.
Have you gotten some motivation or inspiration from people like Ronda or Kayla Harrison, who have gone into MMA and been really successful? Obviously, you have the pedigree to go in there and be successful right away. Was it ever something that crossed your mind to jump into?
Oh God, no, not me personally. No.
Okay.
I actually, he's gonna do his MMA debut soon. He's been boxing for like 12, 13 years. Like he loves it. For me, I would love to coach. I'm really passionate about coaching. I'm actually planning on opening my own judo and jiu-jitsu school in the next couple of years. I won't be jumping into the MMA scene.
Well, the good thing is now there's money in jiu-jitsu, and that those industries sort of, all of these sub-domains of MMA have also grown with it. So it's amazing to see that people can actually compete in jiu-jitsu and make a lot of money too.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like one championship is one that I like a lot. I love watching it, but it's all, you know, they pay their fighters so well. Great promotion. It's always a good watch.
Who's your favorite judoka of all time?
Oh God, that's a hard one.
Did you grow up watching the Olympics and watching people who were doing it before you? Did you have anybody who you really sort of idolized?
Gosh, you know, I think Ronda is definitely one of them because she was a younger person doing it, and all my life, I mean, every little kid wants to be an Olympian, so everyone's always like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna be in the 20 whatever Olympics when I'm 16. But you know, she was actually really young when she did it, so she's definitely one that had probably one of the larger influences on me. I like reading her book. I feel like some of the things that happen in there I can relate to and understand a lot from firsthand my own experiences. So probably her. I actually met her when I was a kid, so that was cool for me. She like gave me a little medal at some Chicago tournament.
just a little bit about the details of judo for people that don't really know and how a match actually happens and what it takes to win. Give me a couple of the rules of judo. How do you actually win a judo match?
For our sport, the equivalent of like a knockout or an automatic win is ippon. So to score that, you throw someone with control and force flat on their back. If you throw someone kind of more just on their side, like ribs, shoulder, but both of their shoulders don't touch flat, it's wazari, and that's half a point. So you get 2 of those, you win. So win by pinning someone. So pinning for us is just, you only need 1 shoulder control, but it's 20 seconds. So you got to hold them down for 20 seconds and then you can win. So that's kind of the basics of it. We have penalties and all that good stuff too. 3 penalties, you lose your match.
And when it comes to the penalties, like the minor infractions, are there actual athletes that use those to kind of stall out as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Look at people. I've had girls with just super long arms that'll just try to walk me out of bounds a bunch of times. But, that's kind of playing into the strategic, like, okay, well, she's pushing me so hard, then I'm going to turn around and throw her that way.
Right.
So part of the game, you're 100% going to get people that do that.
And so what are some of the other rules? Like when does the fight actually go to the ground? And sometimes you see the fight continuing on the ground and it might end up in an arm lock or a choke. How does that happen?
So you can't pull guard in judo. You have to actually try to throw them. If you do like tomonagi, if it's really crappy and you just kind of sit on your butt and you do pull guard, you can get penalized for that.
Yeah.
If you do it and you lift them a little bit and they can see that you're actually putting effort into finishing your technique, finishing the throw, you won't get penalized for that. It's a fine line you trail if that's your game, so you got to get good at it. Sometimes someone's like, there's one knee that goes to the mat, you can transition to the ground, and that's kind of when that all starts.
Right, and I believe at one point in time there was in judo, there was leg attacks that were available, right?
Yeah.
And those are no longer allowed?
Yeah, I believe after oh God, don't quote me on this. I don't remember which Olympics because I was a little younger. I think it was 2012. After 2012, I believe they took away the leg grabs.
Was that like literally like just wrestling? Like you could literally do a double?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was Scupanagi. I remember learning all that when I was really, really little.
Do you know why they phased it out?
I think because it was too similar to wrestling. They wanted to really be more unique, be more of our own sport. And there's rules within the Olympic, like the IOC, about what sports get to become Olympic sports. Like, for example, Jiu-Jitsu will never be an Olympic sport. It's like too similar to judo.
Really?
Yeah, there's, God, I can't remember what the specific rule is, but they can't be like the same thing.
Right.
Like judo and wrestling was a good example. That's one of the reasons I think they took the leg grabs out too.
I was talking to Claudia Doval, who's a world champion jiu-jitsu player, and she was saying that she didn't think it was going to be an Olympic sport either because that I think she said there needs to be a certain amount of champions from each country for it to be eligible.
Right. That's the other problem. Like judo at our championships, we have like over 40 countries sending, and that's like on the low ball end. Like the men's division for 73 kilos probably had like in the upper 70s or 80s different countries. But wrestling, how many countries are in the Wrestling World Championships? Like 13, 14?
Right.
Lower end. So there's a lot. Jiu-Jitsu also doesn't have like a centralized governing body. There's the IBJJF, but not everyone even does those. And right now, like no-gi's definitely... It's
taken a hold, right? Like more people, there's more money in it for sure. Are you doing no-gi as well?
I'm starting to train it more and more.
How do you find that it translates?
Because you move a lot more. Like I can scramble like as if I was a wrestler. I'm not gonna lie, I don't love no-gi. I'm definitely more of a gi gal. I don't hate it. It's not my thing. I do train. I am working on it more and more so that I can, get to that point where I'm doing no-gi competitions more regularly. Maybe I'll even, do an ADCC trials in the next couple of years. But I just want to get that leg lock game up before I jump. Because,
yeah, for sure. The difference between jiu-jitsu schools that you've seen and maybe judo schools or just actually high level schools versus your average school, what's the main difference as far as how those classes are run and maybe how you see jiu-jitsu schools being able to benefit from more of a structure similar to judo or wrestling? What's the difference when you get into those rooms?
I think judo schools for the most part are a lot more serious. The Japanese culture different culturally from how Americans are. So I think like when you walk into a jiu-jitsu room, you know, everyone's pretty comfortable. It's pretty low key or chill or whatever, which is fine. And some people love that. I think that's one of the reasons it's exploded in popularity in the United States, and judo has not. But judo tends to be a lot more structured.
As far as the focus on like the attention to techniques and how many times it's practiced or the amount of repetitions you're getting, is there a big difference?
I think I would like to think there is. Judo, because judo, there's, I think, a more limited amount of techniques and a million ways to do them. So they're similar in that regard, but God, sometimes it's a lot harder picking up someone and throwing them and getting the timing of that than just like grinding out like an arm bar or naked choke or something. You know, I think, I don't want to say it's more technical, but I do think it takes longer to really become masterful at.
Right. And so when you look at these, like the average jiu-jitsu school, what would be maybe some advice you would give to instructors or of how to run a class that might benefit their students to pick up skills a little bit better or just develop faster?
Yeah, I think, and this is probably something I see the most times and get a lot of questions about, you don't need to be good at a million different things or all the cool shit you see on YouTube. Like, I get it does look cool. Like, it does look cool. That doesn't mean it always works, that it's always effective. And you truly need a good foundation before you can move on and become advanced or even masterful or expert level or whatever. For example, in jiu-jitsu, if you can't hit a basic back take, you shouldn't be working on how to like bolo out of stuff and like do all this like fancy craziness. You know, it does look cool, but at the end of the day, if you want to improve and grow, you have to understand from the ground up. You can't just like start up here and then kind of figure out the rest as you go. You got to start from the bottom and work your way out, just like you do with the belts.
Right. And how might you, like, do you also take into consideration people's body types? Obviously, everyone's different. Maybe doubling down on more of what their body types are and leaning into techniques that are actually adaptable for them.
I really do think that. Like, I'm a short, great example. I'm 5'5", and I do not have long legs. Like, my game, there, you know, I need to know how to do a triangle, right? But that does not mean that's my game.
Right. Just to learn how to get out of it.
Exactly. But I was just going to say, you need to know how to do everything, at least the technically correct way, so that you know what to do when someone does it to you.
Right.
You know, just have the reverse and you have that knowledge of like, okay, if they can't get my arm all the way across here, like I'm fine. Stuff like that, little stuff like that.
Right. And so just to sort of like sum that up, as far as process goes, for the average person who wants to get better at jiu-jitsu or judo, a way to approach that as far as training, how do you suggest people actually do train? Is it drilling? Is it rolling more? What's sort of the approach for you?
I think drilling. Rounds are important, but if you're not understanding like how to be successful in those rounds and you know how to really apply the techniques you're doing, that's why I think drilling is more important from the get-go. And then as you're understanding techniques and you're adding things to your repertoire and your game and your arsenal, you can start incorporating those into rolling. And then once those are working really well and you're trying to add on again, the process kind of starts itself over. You need to start drilling the new thing that you're trying to improve, and then you can apply it during rolling and keep it going.
Amazing. Nefeli, I really appreciate all the information and all the wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. Good luck. I'm going to be watching everything that you do. You want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at half of my first name, Nef, period, and then my last name, Papadakis. I'm working on getting more no-gi judo stuff up there and some more tricks and tips to add on to your game. So check me out, and I'll keep everyone posted.
Yeah, I started following you because of those videos, and they're awesome. So please keep them up.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Nefeli.